Hello everyone and welcome back here to round 2 of the Bochum Regional Championships. We're going to actually be casting a senior game here. There has been a few technical issues in the tournament itself and we still want to provide you some good entertainment. We're going to be facing off between Claudio and Iago. And I'm really excited here to be again casting, joined by Ben, who I had a lot of fun with in Cologne.
Yeah, some really good memories from back then. And as you say, we don't want to let you guys down at home. We want to stream as many games as possible. And hopefully, by the time that we've seen what these seniors have to offer, we'll be back up and running with the Masters tournament and going back into round 2. But for now, we have round 2 of the senior division. So we're going to see some probably different things to what we'd usually see in the Masters division, where you have some slightly younger players. These tournaments are split into 3 divisions. So you have juniors, seniors, and masters. And seniors are between, I believe, the ages of 12 and 16, juniors below the age of 12, and masters are all of us old people that still play Pokemon and absolutely love it. So yeah, we're going to be seeing these 2 players and seeing what they're going to be bringing to this tournament.
Yeah, so you just casted round 1. What did you think about it, like now into this new format?
It was really good. It was really good. We were saying while we were on stream that we saw exactly what we were after in the first round. A player, Hippolyte Bernard, who we saw back in Cologne, and we had some good fun casting his games back then. We've had some good fun casting his games in round 1 of this tournament, and he really used his Dynamax factor to a really great effect. Game 1, he was able to use it to raise the attack of his Pokemon and then carry that through all the way to the victory. Game 2, he completely switched it up, used a different Dynamax Pokemon to boost up some different stats and then take really good advantage of it and close out Game 2. So exactly what we wanted to see.
Yeah, definitely. Like the players, of course, have like the opportunity to kind of Dynamax all 6 months. So they probably have a lot of time, a lot of moments where they just kind of want to switch it up, going into Game 2, Game 3. Things that we do see, of course, a lot are going to be something like Togekiss, but maybe, if you Dynamax that in round 1, your opponents have already seen that, you might just want to go for something else. Kind of catch them a little bit off guard.
Yeah, well, Pokemon is a game of trying to predict what your opponent's going to be using and best counter it while still keeping to your strategy. And I think that's the really crucial thing between Game 1 and Game 2. In Pokemon, you really want to find out as much information as you can. So what happens in Game 1, maybe it'll happen again exactly the same, but the likelihood is someone's going to switch it up along the line and going to do something completely different in Game 2 and maybe even Game 3.
Yeah, definitely, because I think when you kind of lose that round, that Game 1, and you're going into Game 2, you kind of think, is there something else I can lead? Or are there different Pokemons I want to bring? Like, what is the Pokemon that I really struggled against?
Yeah.
This time, maybe going into Game 2, I really, really want to bring that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly what we saw in round 1. I'm sure we'll see it again in the tournament. Usually, though, you see the switch up from the player that hasn't won the previous round, right? So, you lose a game, you lose Game 1, you have an opportunity to come back in Game 2 and still take the win. So it's not all lost when you lose that first game. And usually the player that's on the back foot tends to change things up, do something slightly different, and mix up maybe what Dynamax Pokemon they want to use, maybe use a completely different part of their team, because we can only take 4 Pokemon to a game.
Definitely. So one of the things that I think you also kind of have to take into account, that even if you won, if you know your opponent was like, he really struggled with this one mon I had, maybe he's gonna bring that Gastrodon or another Pokemon that is really effective against what worked so well for me. So I think also, like, even if you won, you have quite a good opportunity to also kind of switch it around and kind of make sure that you kind of keep surprising your opponent and don't give away too much information, which they can do a lot of course, coming out of Game 1.
Totally. And this is the real thing. I mean, Pokemon like Gastrodon, we see Pokemon like Ferrothorn or other Pokemon that they are able to really win a game and round off a game by just being able to stick around on the field. And usually these Pokemon you have to really bring a dedicated answer to if you're going to win, because otherwise you get to the end of the game, they've still got a Pokemon on the field, they can't remove it, and therefore they're going to eventually win the game. So, something that you have to be mindful of. But as you said, Romy, sometimes they don't bring it. And if they don't bring it, you've brought something for nothing.
Yes, you're completely right about that. But also now, I do really like this Dynamax opportunity that we've, of course, not seen in previous formats because, it's a new dynamic. And I think it can definitely kind of change up the pace. So, your HP doubles, meaning that something that would, usually KO you, you can easily live this time and fire back some really strong attacks.
Oh, very strong attacks, absolutely. Well, here we go. We've got our players up on the field. So we've got Claudio. Sorry, Claudio, I'm not going to try to pronounce your surname there. And Iago Pardo, they're going to be coming in from Spain. So these players, as you can see on the screen, I didn't quite catch what Claudio's achievements were in the past, but we have Iago's here. 2020 Sheffield Regional Champion, Jönköping Regional Champion in 2019 season, as well as 2019 season the Valencia Special Event Champion. So somebody that really knows what they're doing here.
Yeah, definitely seeing that he's a champion of 3 different things. He's definitely something we can say. He's definitely a top player now here in the senior division. And hopefully he can kind of take it away here now going into this 2020, going into this Bochum Regional.
Yeah, exactly. And we saw a player in the last round, Felix, that hadn't made it onto the stream yet, but likelihood is that Iago has made it onto the stream at some point in his career. So he's going to be maybe able to manage his nerves slightly more effectively than somebody that's not so experienced, being on the main stage, being right on display, and under a little bit more pressure than you're under when you're just over at the tables and competing against someone that you've maybe played before or maybe not.
Yeah, so I mean, you as a player have probably also been in that position a few times.
Yeah, a few times, yeah. Well, I've been playing VGC since 2011.
That's a very long time.
Yeah, which I don't like saying because it now makes me sound quite old. And to be honest, it's probably right. But hey, there we go. And it's, you see so many different things over the years and so many format changes. And that's exactly where we are here. Completely new format, completely new game. And it's so exciting to go into these new formats and see players, how they adjust to things, but also how they adjust to things in comparison to the Masters Division and the Seniors Division. We've got a good opportunity here to showcase these younger players and seeing how they approach the game instead.
Yeah, so kind of think about this format. I myself started in 2017, so that's not too long ago. But for me, I kind of feel like this is a little bit similar because, you do have that restricted decks. There's no legendaries involved like we had in 19. So I kind of do feel like this seems a little bit more similar to 17 where I started in, and definitely had a lot of fun doing it. Now kind of here looking at Iago's team, he does have like 2 new Pokemons that are from the Sword and Shield. We have like Corviknight and Dragapult. I think Dragapult definitely something that we're going to see more of this tournament.
Yeah, it gets a lot of really interesting tools that we haven't seen a combination of too much in the past. It has a new, I say a new typing, it has a typing that was previously exclusive to Giratina, who was one of the legendary Pokemon of Generation 4, which is Diamond, Pearl and Platinum games. So way back in the day, back on the DS. And we haven't seen another Pokemon with that type combination since. So that's going to play a big part, I think, in how much we see Dragapult, because it's a really good typing. But also, it changes the dynamic of a team.
Yes, that means also like a very, very fast. So definitely something Claudio has to take into account. Here looking at his team, he has only kind of 1 new Pokemon, but that is that Duraludon. Definitely something that, it has a new ability, Stalwart, which something we haven't seen yet. Can you tell us something about it?
Well, Stalwart is a really useful ability. We've seen in VGC over the years people opting for moves that redirect attacks. Now, whether that comes in the form of something like Follow Me and Rage Powder, which we saw in the last round, both players were opting to play Follow Me on Indeedee in its female form, as well as Togekiss. We saw both players use Follow Me. So a really prominent tactic. Stalwart is an ability that Duraludon has that allows players to ignore that. So if, for example, Togekiss was to use Follow Me for a partner, we'd ignore that. Duraludon would still attack Togekiss's partner. So a really powerful ability. But also, we've seen abilities out there like Storm Drain, something that Gastrodon uses very commonly in this format and in previous formats, that it ignores as well. So, you know, a really great way to make sure that you're targeting the right thing, getting the damage that you want in the right places.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a really, really good ability, especially now because we have that many like redirections going into this tournament. Definitely with this Dynamax Mons, for instance, Dynamax Togekiss does then not have access to that Follow Me anymore, but people just running regular Togekiss deciding to not Dynamax it, they just can spam Follow Me if their opponent is just not able to deal effectively with the Togekiss or any other redirection user.
Yeah, exactly. So all moves that don't do damage when a Pokemon uses its Dynamax factor and changes into its Dynamax form, turn into Max Guard. So Max Guard is the Dynamax version of Protect, and that reduces all damage, but crucially, it also blocks damage from those all-important max moves as well. So both blocking the damage that comes out as well as those secondary effects that we've seen already in round one and are going to continue to see through the day.
Also, here looking at Claudio's team, I see that Whimsicott, something that, you know, has that prankster ability, meaning that, you know, the support moves do have a +1 priority, but also now with like this new speed mechanics, where it pretty much takes into account immediately. But looking at Claudio's team, he also has a more trick room option with a Jellicent.
Yeah, so players, we were talking about this in round one, players really want to be going first if they can. And that's what you see here with Claudio's team, is the ability to potentially Tailwind if Claudio has decided to train his Whimsicott in that way, but also set up a Trick Room, and Trick Room reverses the move order of all Pokemon on the field. So it doesn't just affect your team, it affects your opponent's team as well, and make sure that all of the slowest Pokemon on the field are the ones that are actually going first instead.
Yeah, because, you know, running slow Pokemons kind of brings something difficult with them, because sometimes you're just kind of going to have to eat 2 moves before they even get to attack, meaning that even if you are really that slow, you're going to take so much damage before you even fire back.
Yeah, exactly. And opting for a Trick Room strategy is a double-edged sword, right? So you have to make sure you're setting it up, making sure that you've got that field effect in place to take advantage of. But if you get it, you have the opportunity to have both the fastest Pokemon on the field, you have more ways to train your Pokemon both offensively and defensively. So really, a lot of the time on faster teams, Pokemon have to either sacrifice power or the ability to survive attacks in order to get that speed. With Trick Room in the field, you don't have to sacrifice anything.
No, definitely. You're way more inclined, you know, to invest a little bit more in bulk, making sure that you actually get to move in Trick Room. Although definitely something you kind of want to run maybe with some more Protect, meaning that you might just want to try and get up Trick Room, protect your Onamon, and just make sure that you start firing a lot of like strong attacks going into the next turn.
Yeah, exactly. But going back to Claudio here, we're seeing his achievements on the screen, and it looks like Claudio's also no stranger to the high levels of competition. So I'm really hoping we're going to see a really high-level game here, with Claudio having a regional championship win in Bristol in the 2019 season, a second place in Valencia special event, and that was the event that Iago was the champion of, I believe, from that tournament. So these players likely have played before, as well as the Tours special event champion as well in the 2018 season. So both players, they've had different seasons and different formats that they've done well in, and they're going to be matched up now, and we're going to see how they are going to be matched up against each other as players, as well as matching up the teams that we've just seen as well.
Yeah, so now, you know, we have a new format, meaning that, you know, there's also going to be a lot of new players. I think, you know, kind of being able to, you know, have some seniors, we can also show that they're the very, very best. And I'm sure that that's exactly what they want to go for.
Yeah, exactly. And really, that, for anyone playing out there that's watching this stream, you don't have to be old or young or anywhere in the middle. You can play. I mean, I remember way back when in 2012. I remember. I think it was a young boy that managed to make it to the World Championships, and he was 5 years old. And it's not something we see commonly, but it did happen back in the day. So, these things aren't restricted to what age you are. You can play in the division that's appropriate for your age. Come along with your parents, come along with your family. Just enjoy the event, because these are tournaments at the end of the day. We all want to come and do well, and we want to win that coveted trophy at the end of it. But equally, these are really great events, right? They're a lot of fun. They're a great opportunity to meet a lot of people, meet people that have similar interests to you, and just grow a community worldwide.
Yeah, and also now, people have a chance to maybe, bring one of their new favorite Pokemon. So I assume, you played Sword and Shield. So kind of thinking about new Pokemon, which one did you like the most?
Well, to be honest, I'm going to be... I'm not going to say boring, but I really like Dragapult. Like, I really do. It's both the typing that we were talking about earlier, but also the design of it. I just really like how it's got those little Dreepies sitting in its dynamite, in its cannon, and using them to great effect. I really like that design.
Yeah, I mean, I personally almost always really kind of like those dragon types. I know that, like, back in the day, I used Noivern a lot because I just really, really loved the design of it.
Yeah.
And when I have that, we kind of a lot of those dragon Pokemon.
So, but if we're talking about favorite Pokemon, what, Romy, is your favorite Pokemon to use, both as a Pokemon and competitively?
I mean, competitively, I think we kind of have to go back a little bit to 2017, where I ran Mudsdale. I actually got my very, very first CP ever in MSS with a Mudsdale team, which I was incredibly happy about. Kind of now going into the same team, like with Sword and Shield. For me, of course, Galarian Rapidash and Galarian Ponyta, of course, one of my favorite Pokemon. I actually got Sword myself, but I have actually asked a friend for me to make sure that he sends me a Ponyta.
Yeah,
so
indeed.
That's definitely something I had a lot of fun running in my playthrough together with Mudsdale.
Yeah, it's such a great Pokemon. We've just had a message that unfortunately there are a few more technical issues, so we're going to sign off for the moment. We're going to make sure all of these issues are ironed out. We'll be back with you with either the game that we were just talking about in the senior division, or jump straight back into the Masters division and bring you some of these games. But we're going to take a short break, get these technical issues resolved, and we'll be back with you as soon as we can. Hello everyone, welcome back. We are here in team preview with Iago and Claudio. We have finally managed to iron out those technical issues. We're going to be getting straight into this game, so take it away, Romy.
Yeah, here on Iago's side we have that Heatrotom, Dragapult, Whimsicott, Scrafty, Corviknight and the Gastrodon. And on Claudio's side we have that Charizard, Whimsicott, Rhyperior, Jellicent, Scrafty and a Duraludon.
Yeah, exactly. So we already talked a little bit about the team, so I won't go into those details again so much, only to say that Claudio is looking really in his team to dish out loads of damage and also be the first person on the field, wanting to double the speed of his team either by setting Tailwind with his Whimsicott, or maybe reversing the speeds of all Pokemon on the field by setting Trick Room with that Jellicent and dishing out lots of damage. Iago, on the other hand, he's going to have to take advantage of all of the Pokemon that he's got at his disposal. He has that Whimsicott as well, so maybe an option to match a Tailwind on his side of the field with Claudio's side of the field. But also he's got some pretty slow Pokemon like that Gastrodon and Scrafty to use in a Trick Room environment as well. So it doesn't matter what speed control is going on in this game. We're going to see some, but both players look like they're well equipped to handle it.
Yeah, so both players here being really creative with their lead cards, making sure that they have something good to show here when they are on stream. And we're now going immediately into game one. On Claudio's side, we have that Whimsicott and Charizard combination. And on Iago's side, we also see the Whimsicott coming out, but it's paired with a Dragapult.
Yeah, so a little bit in Iago's favour in terms of the type matchups. Obviously, we've got the two Whimsicott facing off against each other, but Whimsicott on Claudio's side going to be able to do more damage to that Dragapult, but take less damage from Charizard's main attacking options, which are usually those fire moves. Sometimes a flying move, but usually those fire moves. We may see both of these players decide to set up their Tailwind, double the speed of all of the whole field in this case, and try to take advantage. But Claudio does have the opportunity to maybe set up a sunny day here with his Whimsicott and boost the power of Charizard, known for carrying that solar power ability. And here we see maybe a little Dynamax coming out.
Yeah, we are immediately turn 1. They are deciding to go for that Dynamax. So Claudio here going for that Charizard.
Yeah, so Charizard coming out, going to gain access to all of those max moves, max flare, max airstream potentially. So we'll see what comes out from this turn.
Yeah, Iago's Whimsicott goes for a Tailwind, doubling the speed of itself and its partner, and a Dragon Claw here coming out and revealing that Dragapult is Life Orb. The Whimsicott on Claudio's side not deciding to go for the Tailwind, but immediately follows up with a Moonblast, enough to pick up the KO immediately in turn 1 on that really important Dragapult.
Yeah, and a max airstream finishing off the turn there from that Charizard.
Yeah, definitely, I think a good turn here for Claudio. He put on a lot of offensive pressure, not really going for the Tailwind, but now going into turn 2, he is going to be slower.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's two ways to increase your speed out of the Pokemon that were on the field. Obviously, we saw that Whimsicott setting up a Tailwind for Iago. Claudio deciding that naturally Charizard is slower than Dragapult. Maybe not. That's not the best route to go for. Just deciding to set up that max airstream. So this turn he may opt to go for a Tailwind, and then he ends up overall faster. And of course manages to take the knockout onto Dragapult with his Whimsicott, and Iago has lost a Pokemon and gone down to his Focus Sash on Whimsicott, so taking loads of damage in this first turn for getting Tailwind up and not that much damage coming out on the Charizard. So good turn for Claudio. Iago's going to have to dig deep here, and he's brought out his Rotom, Heat Form Rotom, which is going to be able to resist Charizard's attacks, but also it's part electric type, and Charizard being weak to electric type moves is going to have to worry about the damage that's coming out from that Rotom.
Yeah, definitely something like a Thunderbolt could be coming out and immediately doing a lot of damage into this Charizard. We see the Dynamax here from Iago also coming out. He decides to go for that Rotom Heat, so possibly getting access to Max Lightning.
Yeah, Max Lightning could be coming out, and we see Dynamax coming out immediately, going to be that Rotom Heat. Not likely that Whimsicott's going to be using that Dynamax at 1 HP.
Having a Max Guard here coming out from Charizard, not wanting to take possibly these Thunderbolts or Max Lightnings that would have been coming out from Rotom Heat. A Energy Ball into the Whimsicott on Claudio's side, and a Fire move here, the Max Flare going into the Whimsicott here on, I believe, Claudio's side.
Yeah, into the Whimsicott on Claudio's side. We saw the Max Guard coming out from Charizard, so not attacking this turn, but activating that solar power ability. So now we know what ability that Charizard's running. Iago's got some really good information going into the next turns and maybe game 2, depending on how this set plays out. Rotom has increased the power of its moves, its fire type moves, with that Max Flare coming out, but also it's going to be difficult for Iago because he's boosted the power of Charizard. So while he made a really great prediction that Charizard was going to defend itself that turn, actually by using that Max Flare to take a knockout on Whimsicott, he's actually managed to power up the Charizard, and it's something that now he's going to have to be really careful of so that the Charizard doesn't run over his team.
Yeah, so Claudio just switched in that Jellicent, meaning that he kind of went and for that Whimsicott kind of core, where, you usually kind of use it as a speed advantage, kind of more, like Tailwind or something, but he also brought that Jellicent, so maybe he wants to also go a little bit on the slower route, maybe indicating what he has in the back.
Yeah, exactly, as we see Whimsicott going straight for the Energy Ball there into Jellicent and doing quite a lot of damage there. We don't see a special defense drop, but followed up by a Max Lightning on Rotom.
Yeah, this time enough. Was it just not enough to pick up the KO? I'm not sure, actually, but we're going to see it. Oh, the Charizard did just fade. Like sometimes they can live on like 1 or 2 HP and I tend to miss it, but you know, Max Lightning definitely here enough to pick up the KO on that Charizard. Also here on the Dynamax from Claudio, and he does go for Trick Room.
Yeah, so reversing the speeds there, so that tailwind that Iago set up early in the game is going to be working definitely against him in coming into the next 4 turns. Now with Rhyperior coming onto the field and going to be dishing out a lot of damage here. Rotom is not going to be too happy to see Rhyperior with access to those powerful rock-type moves. We've already seen the Dynamax come out from Charizard, so not going to be able to see anything like a Max Rockfall coming out and changing the terrain. But certainly Claudio's going to be able to dish out a lot of damage here, maybe knock out that Whimsicott, and do a lot of damage to the Rotom.
Yeah, so also Iago does have still 1 Pokemon in the back. Kind of maybe he wants to maybe switch in something else, maybe protect his Whimsicott for later on, so he can maybe set up Tailwind again. And that's exactly what we see happening. We see that Whimsicott leaving the field. Crafty is switching in with that Intimidate ability. Will lower the attack of that Rhyperior and a Jellicent. Definitely important there, it's lowering the attack of the Rhyperior. We're doing a lot of damage here, Rotom, and we do actually see the weakness policy activated, I believe here. Definitely something that we see a lot run on that Rhyperior. Will now increase its stat and special attack by 2 stages, but even Rotom is able to live on this, and we see a berry proc here. We're going to find out if that is that Citrus Berry exactly. Going to heal back a little bit of health as a Max Lightning fires into that Jellicent. Not enough to pick up the kill. A really, really bulky Pokemon here, the Jellicent.
Yeah, exactly. We see the real effect of Dynamax coming out. Rotom managing to survive that survive that Rock Slide so well and activating its berry. So the increased health that Pokemon get when they go into their Dynamax form really being crucial here. We saw Jellicent target the Rhyperior that turn, so Claudio wanted to really activate that weakness policy and make use of it going forwards.
A fake out coming out from Scrafty. Rhyperior not going to be moving, and a strength step here coming out from Jellicent will lower the attack of the Scrafty while healing back a little bit of health. Rotom here going for a full switch, wanting to leave the field and switch back in his Whimsicott that he has in the back. Yeah,
so we'll see if see what happens going into the next few turns. We've still got a couple of few turns of Trick Room left, so Iago's going to have to hold out and make sure that he's got enough resources to get through the Trick Room. He may want to preserve that Whimsicott so that it can launch a powerful energy ball onto both Jellicent and Rhyperior. We saw Jellicent using that Strength Sap, which is a really good new move. Oh, it's not a new move, not a brand new move, but a fairly recent addition to the moves in the Pokemon series, raising its HP back and lowering the attack of Scrafty. So a really good mix of things happening in this turn.
Yeah, Jellicent going for Scald, doing a tiny bit of damage, but he does get that burn. Definitely important for like a physical attacker. Whimsicott avoiding the Rock Slide that is coming out here from that Rhyperior. And also Scrafty is gonna flinch. And Whimsicott just fires back with an energy ball. Is enough, luckily, for it to pick up the KO on the Rhyperior. So no worries anymore about flinches.
No worries at all. And a really good turn there for Iago. I really want to touch on this. I mean, we have moves like Rock Slide in the game that do have the opportunity to flinch, like we saw on Scrafty, but it also has the opportunity to miss, and that can really change the dynamic of a game where you see Whimsicott that usually would have been knocked out by any attack that hits it, just being knocked out, avoiding the knockout from Rock Slide and being able to launch that energy ball back into Rhyperior.
Yeah, so now it's all up to Jellicent, which now goes for a Giga Drain. This time, you know, of course, it is hitting enough to pick up the KO on that Whimsicott and healing back, I believe, 1 HP here.
Yes, it will be, yeah.
Scrafty here going for a big throw chop. You know, doing a tiny bit of chip damage is kind of all what you have to go for in this position. And the burn definitely being a little bit tough here for Iago.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a combination there of a burn on the Scrafty as well as the the attack drop from Strength Sap earlier in the game. But Rotom here likely going to be in a position where it can just wait out the last turn of Trick Room, go for that Jellicent into the next turn, and round off this game.
Rotom firing off a full switch is enough here to pick up the KO on that Jellicent. So Iago here coming out victorious.
Yeah, going to be winning that first game. And really, I do like the interaction between both of these players. We talked about using the speed advantage to your maximum benefit through the game. And that's exactly what both players were trying to do. It just turned out that Claudio had a few more tools. He used all of them, but Iago was able to just say, no, I have some slightly stronger Pokemon that were slightly better in the matchup. That Scrafty coming in at the end is a really good check to something like Rhyperior, and certainly Jellicent as well. So, he had the resources he needed at the end of the game, regardless of if Claudio took the speed to the most advantage.
Yeah, so Claudio here kind of opting to bring both that Whimsicott and that Jellicent. He did kind of get off that Trick Room, but he was not really able to do that much with it, even though he kind of had that slow Pokemon with Jellicent and Rhyperior. So kind of going into game 2, do you think he kind of wants to go for the strange set strategy or kind of maybe lead immediately with Trick Room?
Well, I really liked the early game from Claudio where he brought out that Whimsicott, that Charizard, putting a lot of pressure on. Iago had probably a slightly better end of the stick for the partner to Whimsicott, where he had Dragapult, which was able to resist Charizard and make that slightly less useful. We saw that being quite impactful earlier in the game. But actually, I really liked from Claudio that he was able to take that knockout on Dragapult so early in the game. And I think maybe we see a little bit of a mix where Claudio wants to remove that Dragapult from the field, maybe in the same way that it did in game 1, and then really go a little bit harder into that Trick Room mode and try to use that to better effect.
Yeah, so Iago, just lost his Pokemon, his Dragapult, immediately turn 1. Do you think he maybe just wants to maybe lead with it again, but this time maybe go for something like a Dynamax, because it's probably just way easier going to lift that Moonblast coming out from Whimsicott?
Well, potentially, but, Dynamax is one of these things that you've got to... Some players want to set it up straight away. Some players want to hold out until later in the game. And really, I think the decision for Iago here is whether he wants to hold that Dynamax on his Rotom or on his Dragapult. Maybe his Scrafty potentially as well. We know that that's quite a good Dynamax form too, and it's certainly an option for him. But if Claudio decides that he wants to carry on down Dynamaxing his Charizard, then it may be that Iago needs to Dynamax his Rotom exactly the same that he did in game 1. If it turns out that Jellicent is maybe more prominent in this game, Iago may want to Dynamax that Dragapult to use those big Max Phantasms, which are super effective against Jellicent, to stop those Trick Rooms going up. Take advantage of the Tailwind that he set up in game 1 and didn't manage to use very well through a combination of plays going on, and play it slightly differently in that way.
Yeah, maybe Iago wants to bring Gastrodon to kind of easier deal with that Jellicent. Of course, also an option if he may want to kind of change also up the Pokemon that he decides to bring. And we are going to see the Jellicent lead this time together with Scrafty, definitely pressuring with that Intimidate, with that Fake Out possibility. And Iago going for the same thing. Of course, the Dragapult is not going to be lowered by the Intimidate because of his clear body ability. But we are also going to see that Whimsicott again.
Yeah, so Claudio looking like he is going straight off the bat, wanting to set up that Trick Room. Iago keeping the same leads as before. If it works for you in the first game, the likelihood is that you want to start there and see how your opponent adapts. Even if you lose the game, you can still have the opportunity to understand how they react to what you've done in game 1 and use that in a potential game 3. So I like that play from Iago, making sure the leads are the same. And now Claudio has to decide whether he wants to let Iago attack into the Jellicent, maybe bring out that fake out that you mentioned there earlier to stop Whimsicott doing any super effective damage, or just go straight for a Dynamax.
Yeah, and I believe this time it is the Iago, if I remembered what the characters looked like this time. And it is actually going to be that Whimsicott, so definitely not something that we see Dynamax a lot. This is more of a supportive mon that we see often used, but I'm really interested with what this Whimsicott is going to do. So Scrafty just going to go for a fake out, meaning that now the Dragapult just follows up with Dragon Claw, but Whimsicott is still going to be able to move because fake out does not work against Dynamax Pokemon. And we do see a Max Overgrowth here coming out into Jellicent is enough to pick up the KO. So this time, no Trick Room coming out from the Jellicent.
No, and Claudio going a little bit stronger into his Trick Room mode. Iago seeing right through that, and as you rightly say, using that Whimsicott Dynamax form to avoid the fake out. Dynamax Pokemon aren't able to flinch, so a little bit of damage taken, but that's okay in the grand scheme of things. And now Whimsicott has access to that Max Starfall as well, which is going to be really good against both the Duraludon that's come in for Claudio as well as that Scrafty. So Iago taking an absolutely commanding first turn there, making sure he's right on the front foot. He's able to be in the most offensive position that he can, and Claudio's going to have to use as much as he can, as many resources as he's got to get back into this game and see what he can do.
Yeah, so Dragapult here actually revealing that it is a U-turn, meaning that it is going to switch out, and Iago now kind of has an opportunity to switch something else in that might kind of benefit this Whimsicott better right now.
Yeah, maybe, so he could be bringing in that Rotom or just that Scrafty to get an Intimidate on the field and maybe resist a Dragon-type attack that Duraludon wants to use.
Alfred also now has access to that fake out if he wants to go for that in the next turn. And a Max Starfall coming out, and we see that Scrafty eating a berry, that's probably indicating that it is going to reduce the damage of this berry attack. But Scrafty is not able to live on even with its berry with a critical hit, possibly mattering quite a lot here while Misty Terrain goes on the field.
Yeah, exactly. Not something that Claudio wanted to see there, and you see that Roselli Berry activation for Scrafty. Not going to be enough with the critical hit, but finishing off the turn with Duraludon going for a Flash Cannon. Yeah,
doing quite a lot of damage here to that Dynamax Whimsicott, but he is now already, 2 ones down, and Iago still has all 4 of them.
Yeah, exactly, and we see Rhyperior coming in for Claudio, but against something like Whimsicott is not exactly what you want left on the field. That Max Starfall activating the Misty Terrain is going to affect Duraludon's ability to do damage here. We haven't seen Claudio go for a Dynamax yet, so maybe we'll see one coming out and seeing if with the Dynamax, with the boosted HP that it gets, the Dynamax Pokemon get, maybe there's enough gas in the tank to get through the Whimsicott that's going to be changing back into its normal form soon, but also Claudio going to be able to maybe take good advantage of those Dynamax moves.
Yeah, so he's now deciding to go for his own Dynamax, maybe going into that Rhyperior, which we saw was weakness policy, but actually he goes for that Duraludon here, so maybe any Max Overgrowth coming out are going to still do a lot of damage to this Rhyperior.
Yeah, certainly, and we see the Rhyperior. Is it going for a Protect? Yes, it is. There we go, Rhyperior not wanting to take any more damage that turn.
No, definitely not. It's not. Whimsicott is going to go for that Max Overgrowth. Now into the Protect, still going to do damage, but it's this time quite easily to hang on to this.
Yeah, exactly, and that grassy terrain setting up, that's the 3rd terrain in a row that we've changed, so Iago wants just to see a little bit of a different background as that weakness policy activates on Rhyperior.
Yeah, definitely, I think here's smart play from Claudio and just protecting, making sure that his weakness policy gets activated without him dying. Duraludon firing back a big mech Steel Spike into the Whimsicott, enough to pick up the kill, and it will also increase his defenses, which can be quite useful since he is currently facing a Scrafty and a Dragapult that is in the back that is also a physical attacker.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a really good way to change the game. And you can see the effect of it there. That close combat really didn't do too much damage from that Scrafty.
No, and also the defenses and special defenses is Crafty just lowered, so Claudio is quite in a commanding position to, he's now at +1 defense, but it's Crafty that he's facing is at -1, so he can definitely go for some strong attacks, for instance, with his Rhyperior that is now at +2 attack.
Yeah, exactly. So Iago maybe wanting over the next couple of turns to switch out that Scrafty, maybe switch it back in, gain access to that fake out move that we've seen already in this game and quite commonly in VGC to make a Pokemon flinch. Rotom coming out here, not going to be in the nicest position to be in, but Duraludon is a Pokemon that isn't known for its special defense. And so it may be, depending on what item that Duraludon is holding, that a combination of Rotom's close combat and overheat from Rotom that's coming out here will be enough to pick up the KO on Duraludon.
Yeah, so it's going to be able to live on, and he is going to just fire off this big max whirlwind, doing a lot of damage here on that Rotom, while it will also lower the attack stat of both of these Pokemon. Definitely not a good position here for Scrafty to be in. Rotom just munching back on its Citrus Berry, getting a little bit of extra health back, but Scrafty here going for a close combat into the Rhyperior, and even with it being a super effective move, it's really not doing that much damage. Rhyperior here, Rotom again avoiding that rock slide. He's definitely a very well-trained Rotom there, and also doing a lot of damage here on that Scrafty with these, -2 defenses.
Yeah, well, you see the combination there of a weakness policy raising both the attack and special attack of Rhyperior by 2 stages, but also that close combat coming out from Scrafty. He's used it twice now, so it's at -2 defenses, and defense and special defense. So you can see there a resisted attack doing more than half to Scrafty is really, really instrumental to the next few turns. Looks like Iago is playing it a little bit more slowly, wanting to chip down both Pokemon and make sure that he's got that Dragapult in the end to finish things off.
Yeah, here Rotom revealing that it actually runs Will-O-Wisp is now going to burn this Rhyperior. Definitely good since it will have any physical attacks coming out from that Rhyperior. But Scrafty here is just going to be knocked out because of the Max Steel Spike coming out from that Duraludon. Is going to be raising its defenses again, and now Iago's just left, I believe, with that Dragapult in the back.
Yeah, we'll see if this Rock Slide connects, and it does this time. So a great turn there from Claudio, and the burn not making as much impact as I think Iago wanted to, taking the knockout, and now what looked like such a commanding position for Iago has turned into a 2-1 deficit of Pokemon.
Yeah, so now he's only left with Dragapult, and he is still facing down, 2 of this Mon. Dragapult, it tends to be quite a, a strong attacker, quite fast, so it's not really known for its defenses.
Yeah, exactly, and we've already seen that Life Orb item, so going to be doing a little bit of damage to itself every turn in order to attack. But Duraludon going back into its normal form now, losing that HP boost that it gained from its Dynamax form, and Duraludon maybe has Dragapult maybe has an opportunity to remove that Duraludon from the field before it attacks. Only has to deal with a Rhyperior, even though it's got 2 stages of increased attack, does have that burn negating that boost, so may be able to still close out this game.
Yeah, Dragapult here going for a Dragon Claw, not enough to pick up the KO as Duraludon. Ooh, goes for Dragon Meteor, which will miss. And Rhyperior here following it up with that high horsepower. And Dragapult is able to hang on with that 3 HP, but he is still going to have to take down both of these Pokemon on Claudio's side to win this game.
Yeah, and you see, Duraludon's been on the field for quite a while, and certainly since that grassy terrain was set up by Whimsicott earlier in the game. And all of the HP that Duraludon has left is probably been recovered already by grassy terrain, so Iago may be shooting himself in the foot there and, getting to a position where he isn't able to knock out that Duraludon.
Ooh, Dragapult here going for a Phantom Force, meaning that it's going to, disappear for this turn, so both attacks here coming out from Rhyperior and Duraludon are going to be avoided. So good play here.
Yeah, just making sure he's got as much time as he can. Both moves that Claudio is using on his side of the field are moves that can miss. So you've got the high horsepower coming out from Rhyperior. We've already seen the Rock Slide, and we've definitely seen it miss already. Duraludon maybe only needs to use something like a Flash Cannon instead of Draco Meteor, which we've already seen miss. But not quite enough to pick up the KO there with Phantom Force.
Dragapult deciding to go for that Duraludon and is now going to faint because I believe she's off its own life orb damage.
Yeah, so game 2 to Claudio.
Yeah, so Claudio definitely switching it up, even though we kind of saw the same thing happen in game 1, where, the one player that actually lost one of his mons in turn 1 was actually the one that ended up being victorious.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, which is not something that, you'd expect to see. And this is, I think, the real good thing about Dynamax and how players use it. We saw that the main reason that Claudio was able to get back into the game was he was left with his 2 strong, quite bulky attackers that were able to take a lot of hits. They were able to he was able to have his Dynamax left over to the end of the game, use those max steel spikes, increase the defense, which lowered the amount of damage these Pokemon were taking from close combat from that Scrafty, but also that Dragon Claw and Phantom Force in the end game, and we saw how much impact that had. The Dragapult just wasn't able to finish off that Duraludon.
Yeah, so we saw Iago actually Dynamax his Whimsicott, not something that we see a lot because it's more of a supportive mon. Do you think now kind of it was definitely a good idea to kind of stop that Jellicent, but kind of here looking at Iago's team, do you kind of think he has something else to stop this Trick Room from going up and maybe using his Dynamax on like a more offensive mon?
Well, potentially. I mean, I think now we've seen that Claudio didn't bring his Charizard to that game. Maybe that's a route for Iago to bring his Corviknight to the game, being that Charizard is the main way for Claudio to remove something like Corviknight from the field. So there's a real mind game here as to who takes what and what Pokemon will be missing from game 1, what Pokemon will be missing from game 2. Wait a minute, now I've got to work out what Pokemon are going to be missing from game 3. So there's going to be a bit of a mind game there, and I'm really excited to see what these players decide to do, because I'd love to see that Corviknight coming out onto the field.
Yeah, also something kind of love to see Iago do is maybe use the Intimidate on his Scrafty a little bit more, especially since we saw that he had kind of an issue with that Rhyperior and a little bit of that Scrafty. If he maybe, switch it out a little bit sooner, doesn't let it take so many close combat boosts pretty much, that he gets his stat lowered, kind of switch it out and make sure that he preserves it Intimidate and Fake Out possibility going a little bit into the later game.
I think so. I think, we'll see if they've decided to do that, where we see yet another lead coming out here with Duraludon and Whimsicott, and Dragapult and Whimsicott coming out for Iago.
Yeah, Iago just going for the same thing that he thinks worked for him in game 1 and what he used in game 2. But Claudio this time again for a third time switching it up, this time bringing the Duraludon.
Yeah, Claudio using the Pokemon straight away that made the most impact in game 2. And I really like this strategy to bring that out into the forefront, and maybe thinking, if I can do lots of damage right at the start, maybe set up a Tailwind this time and go down a different strategy, that whatever I've got in the back of my team, whether that's the Rhyperior, whether that's the Charizard, maybe I've still got enough to just mop up the rest of Iago's team and take the win that way.
Yeah, so Whimsicott on Claudio's side, indeed going for that Tailwind, is going to double his speed as Duraludon is now free to go for a Flash Cannon into the Whimsicott on Iago's side, is going to hang on because of that Focus Sash, and is still going to be able to move Dragapult immediately going for a Phantom Force that we saw in game 2 not being enough to pick up the KO on the Duraludon. And Whimsicott here going for a Moonblast, doing a tiny bit of chip damage.
Yeah, but crucially not getting the drop, and I think that's probably what Iago was hoping for there in some way, that Duraludon's special attack would have been dropped. We've seen that the Tailwinds actually come out first from Claudio this time, which is a big change from what we saw game 1 when both these Whimsicott faced up against each other, and it looks like Iago wants to match that.
Yeah, Iago now matching this Tailwind is now going to kind of be he has now one turn more of that Tailwind in the future, and that Phantom Force doing a lot of damage here. when this Dragapult removes. And the Moonblast here on Claudio's side, going into the Whimsicott on Iago, is going to be enough to pick up the KO. Duraludon this time hitting its Draco Meteor. Hopefully here enough to do a lot of damage onto the Dragapult, and yes, immediately enough to pick up the knockout.
Yeah, so, wow. This slightly different from Game 2. That Phantom Force, and to be honest, Dragapult in general just not quite picking up that knockouts both in Game 2 and now. So Duraludon able to launch that Draco Meteor back into Dragapult on Iago's side of the field. Now we see Gastrodon and Rotom come onto the field, and Gastrodon's not going to be liking what it sees in front of him.
Definitely not. So I think we were just kind of talking about maybe him wanting to bring Gastrodon in case Claudio brings that Jellicent, but that's not the case here.
No, it's not, and Gastrodon's going to be under a real amount of pressure from Whimsicott and Duraludon. It may be that Claudio is going to take a leaf out of Iago's book, Dynamax that Whimsicott and use those powerful Max Overgrowths to dispatch the Gastrodon, but also take less overall damage from the Rotom Heat, maybe keep that Whimsicott on the field to make sure that Gastrodon goes down.
Yeah, Iago here, I believe, going for that Dynamax on his Gastrodon here, so hopefully maybe going to be living any energy balls or maybe Max Overgrowth coming out from that Whimsicott.
Yeah, a common item we've seen here are things like the Rindo Berry, so we'll see if that's a big factor coming into this turn.
Yeah, we see Sunny Day coming out from that Whimsicott, will then reduce any of the water attacks coming out from that Gastrodon as Volt Switch goes into Whimsicott, and it's... Oh, I missed, was it not Volt Switch?
It was Volt Switch, yeah, but unfortunately with two Pokemon on the field, you're not able to switch anymore.
Definitely, so a Drago Meteor again going into that Rotom Heat as a Max Ooze, so no water type attack coming out is enough to pick up the KO on that Whimsicott.
Yeah, I really like that from Iago actually. Max Ooze has the effect of raising special attack exactly as we see there for both Pokemon on your side of the field, and Rotom really likes that.
Yeah, Rotom, but also Gastrodon really likes that. Definitely good now that Sunny Day is up, or at least the sunlight is up, because any water attacks are just not going to really be doing that much damage, which is kind of something that you want to use with that Gastrodon. But we do now see that Charizard is the last Pokemon on Claudio's side.
Yeah, and I really like that from Claudio, how he set up that Sunny Day, knew that the Whimsicott was likely to be going down that turn. Now he brings in his Charizard. We've seen that Solar Power ability already, and we haven't seen a Dynamax yet, so maybe we're seeing a glimpse of things to come with that Charizard using its Dynamax factor, going into its Dynamax form and launching out those big Max Overgrowths based on Solar Beam.
Yeah, so Claudio now revealing his last mon, switching out this Duraludon into the Rapirior. We are going to see Charizard Dynamax this turn, so also maybe Gastrodon has to worry about something like Max Overgrowth in case Charizard does run its Solar Beam.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we'd be likely to be seeing. With the solar power boost, the increase in power from using Max Overgrowth, I'd be really shocked if Gastrodon was able to survive that turn.
Ooh, an ally switch coming out here. Definitely something that's really difficult to play against. Switching the sides of Gastrodon, it's now going to eat a Max Flare, which is just really not going to be doing that much damage. Definitely something Claudio did not want to see. Gastrodon here firing back with a Max Geyser into this Charizard, which is now able to quite easily lift his.
Yeah, but I mean, that was a lot of damage to be doing in Sun. Sun reducing the power of water-type attacks, but now that Rain is up on the field, Gastrodon's going to be doing a lot of damage. Not going to affect Max Overgrowth in the same way that it would affect Solar Beam. Usually Solar Beam wouldn't be able to be used if you were in Rain without charging up for a turn, but Max Overgrowth doesn't work like that. You can just use it in any situation that you want.
Yeah, so that ally switch here coming out might make it a little bit more difficult for Claudio here. He decides to, you know, protect his Charizard and actually also his Rapirior. Maybe kind of seeing what Iago wants to do. He just goes for a Volt Switch into the Max Guard of that Charizard as Gastrodon fires back a Max Geyser. Also, actually into the Rapirior. Ooh, to protect even just more than enough to pick up a clean knockout here.
Yeah, and you can see the impact of that Max Ooze from earlier with the boost in power to water type moves that comes from the rain weather effect, as well as the increase in power from those max moves. So Gastrodon, even though it's going back into its normal form, I think has really done its job for this game.
Yeah, so maybe Charizard wanted to go for a max flare in case he wants to set up the sun again and kind of remove the rain.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have this interaction anymore where Charizard can set up max flare, make sure the sun is up, and Gastrodon can't reply with that max geyser to set up the rain again. So good play here from Claudio, but unfortunately for Claudio, Iago saw right through that, saw that Claudio may have wanted to protect his Charizard, and took full advantage of that by just going straight into that Rhyperior and picking up the knockout.
Yeah, Protector definitely not helping the Rhyperior, as Charizard does reveal that it has that max overgrowth, and we see Gastrodon consuming that super effective berry of the grass type, so might be able to hang on here. No, even that berry again, like we saw in Scrafty in the earlier game, is really not going to make any of these Mons live it.
No, exactly, and there's a real mind game going on here. Gastrodon fainting from that, but Iago has already revealed that he has that option to go for an ally switch, as Rotom instead opts for a Volt Switch into that Charizard and picks up the KO.
Yeah, so now it's going to be kind of that 101 versus Duraludon on Rotom Heat. Duraludon is still going to be able to move and go for another Drago Meteor into this Rotom, just enough to pick up the KO here. So Claudio, seeing that, he's really, really happy that just took the knockout, and he's our winner here.
Yeah, I see the handshake coming out of both players. Looked like they had a good time, but Claudio really excited to have won, and he deserves it. I mean, we've seen such backwards and forwards games, both games one where there was an early knockout that came right on turn one, and then the other player won. Exactly the same thing happened in game two, but this time, yeah, it was the person that took the knockout turn one that managed to get the win.
Yeah, this time changing a little bit up. I did really like Iago bringing that Gastrodon. We're kind of talking about it. It might be able to help with a Jellicent, but it actually was really, really useful. Just making sure that in case Charizard went to this with those max flares, could just fire back a max geyser and set up the rain again. Yeah,
exactly. And I think Gastrodon is a Pokemon that you need to protect. We were talking about this earlier, where you have these kind of Pokemon that are you have to bring enough resources to be able to deal with. Gastrodon is definitely one of them. If that max overgrowth wasn't available for Claudio to use as an option there, it would have been much more difficult for him to be able to deal with that Gastrodon. So really good play there from Claudio to make sure he had what he needed to do to get through the Gastrodon, but equally, good for Iago to be bringing it, making sure it comes to that game 3 where it didn't come to game 1 and 2, and switching things up and seeing if he can take Claudio a little bit more by surprise.
Yeah, and he definitely did that with Claudio. Just, changing a little bit up. He didn't bring that Charizard in game 2, which he did win, but then he decided, into game 3, I know it didn't work for me in game 1, but I am sure it's going to work in game 3. And he was completely right. Yeah,
exactly. So we're going to take a short break. We'll hopefully be back with a winner's interview for this match. We'll be right back and see you soon.